Hey, and welcome to Italian 1 Module 4. Let's get started with the tenses, regular and reflexive verbs, and the infinitives. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to go through all the tenses that we're going to learn this year. And these are just the names of the tenses. We're not conjugating anything. So this is just sort of a preview to let you know what the names are in Italian. All right, so we have the presente, which is I do, I am doing, and I do do. The passato prossimo, which is I did. L'imperfetto, which was I was doing. Il trapassato, I had or have done. Il futuro semplice, I will do. Il condizionale, I could or would do. Il condizionale passato, I could have or would have done. And il passato remoto, I did, but it's only used in books as a literary tense. L'imperativo, which is do it, a command form, and il congiuntivo for expressions of desire. All right, so here they are. These are all the tenses in Italian that we'll go over this year, and these help us know where verbs are in time. Okay? All right, so in the next few months, we'll actually conjugate our verbs in these tenses. Next up, let's go over how to conjugate a verb in the presente. Okay, that's the first tense that we're going to do. Presente, which is that you're doing it right now. All right, certain verbs end in ARE, ERE, or IRE. These are our regular verbs. So what you're going to do is you're going to take off the ARE, ERE, or IRE, and then add the endings to what's left. And what's left is called the stem. So let's do parlare, to speak. All right, what happens if you take off ARE? You get PARL, parla. All right, so let's add the endings for ARE verbs to the stem. Io parlo. Io parlo, tu parli, lui, lei parla, noi parliamo, voi parlate, loro parlano. All right, so just to go over what these mean, they mean I speak, you speak, he, she, you formal speaks, we speak, y'all speak, they, y'all formal speak. All right, let's go over the regular verbs in the presente. Okay, so we just saw how to conjugate a verb, and that verb was an ARE verb. Let's go over all the endings for ARE, ERE, and IRE. Our first verb is going to be mangiare. Okay, so we just saw that the endings for ARE verbs are o, I, e, iamo, ate, ano. Here's mangiare. Mangio, mangi, mangia, mangiamo, mangiate, mangiano. And remember, we took the ARE off and we put on the endings. Here are a few more verbs just like it. Parlare, which we already did, mangiare, which we already did, and abitare. Okay, all three of those verbs are conjugated the same way. Take the ARE off and put on the endings. Next up, let's do ERE verbs. Its endings are o, I, e, iamo, ete, ono. Our first verb is mettere, which means to put. Metto, metti, mette. Mettiamo, mettete, mettono. Mettere, to put. A few more verbs like this ERE verb are prendere, to take, and credere, to believe. Next up, we have IRE verbs. Its endings are o, I, e, iamo, ite, ono. Now, do you see how similar ARE, ERE, and IRE verb endings are? They're the same in the left-hand column. And then they just have a few changes in the right-hand column. Let's conjugate dormire, which means to sleep. Dormo, dormi, dorme. Dormiamo, dormite, dormono. Okay, to sleep, dormire. Two other verbs like dormire are partire and sentire. Now there's one kind of IRE verb that we call IRE-isk verbs, and that's because they have a slight spelling change that's different than normal IRE verbs. So here are the endings. Sko, she, she, iamo, ite, skono. Oops, sorry, that O should be joining the rest of the ending up there. So our verb in this category is capire, to understand. Let's conjugate it. Capisco, capisci, capisce. Capiamo, capite, capiscono. All right, capire means to understand, but don't conjugate it like a normal IRE verb. Conjugate it in this category, the IRE-isk verbs. Two more verbs like it are pulire and spedire, to clean and to send mail. Next up, let's just go over some infinitives, okay? So now that you know that there are these 4 classes of regular verbs, ARE, ERE, IRE, and IRE-isk, we can give you a whole lot more verbs, and you can just memorize the infinitive because now you know how to conjugate them. The conjugations are pretty easy. We have another category of infinitives that are irregular, and those you just have to memorize point blank, okay? There's no pattern. And we're going to get into those conjugations later in the year. All right, so here are a bunch of verbs. This week, you'll want to go ahead and memorize all of the verbs along with their definition, okay? And these verbs are great because a lot of them sound exactly like what they mean. They sound the same in Italian as they do in English. And then all of the ones in the first columns are conjugated regularly, okay? So there's no battle to remember which conjugations they are. In the right-hand column, the irregular verbs don't have easy patterns, and those we're going to memorize shortly. All right, so let's just start reading only the Italian through. And as I read the Italian, repeat it after me and look at the English translation, okay? And we're just going to go straight down. So we're going to do all of the ARE verbs first, then we'll do the ERE verbs, then we'll do the IRE verbs, and then the IRE-isk, and then the regular verbs. Okay, so let's just read them straight down. Parlare, mangiare, abitare, amare, arrivare, ascoltare, aspettare, ballare, cambiare, cantare, comprare, frequentare, guardare, guidare, imparare, incontrare, insegnare, lavorare, ricordare, suonare, telefonare. Now for ERE. Mettere, prendere, credere, chiudere, correre, dipingere, leggere, mettere, perdere, piovere, ricevere, rispondere, vedere. IRE verbs. Dormire, partire, sentire, aprire, offrire, seguire, servire. IRE-isk verbs. Capire, pulire, spedire, finire, preferire. Irregular verbs. Avere, andare, essere, dare, stare, fare, dovere, potere, volere, dire, uscire, venire, conoscere, sapere, piacere. Oh, and we have one more, tornare, to return to. Sorry, 2 more, trovare, to find. Okay, all right, so that looks like a big chart, but remember, most of it is patterns. Next up, let's do an example of a reflexive verb. Okay, so nothing changes here. Alzarsi is a verb that conjugates just like an ARE verb, okay? The special part of it is that there's C on the end, okay? So I want you to think about this as an ARE verb, but the C part makes it reflexive. So by reflexive, we mean the verb acts on the subject. So in Italian, instead of saying to get up, like to get up out of a chair, they say I get myself up out of the chair. We sometimes have reflexive verbs too, like we love each other, okay? All right, so alzare is an ARE verb that is reflexive, okay? If you ever see si on the back of a verb, you know that it's a reflexive verb. All right, so we conjugate it the exact same way, just like the ARE verbs, okay? Except we insert a reflexive pronoun in between, in front of the conjugation. Okay, so remember that the first ending for ARE verbs is O. All right, so instead of saying alzo, I get up, you would say mi alzo, I get myself up, okay? Mi alzo is how it's usually said. You can say io mi alzo, but you'll sort of be emphasizing the fact that it's you. All right, so let's do the rest of them. Ti alzi, si alza, ci alziamo, vi alzate, si alzano. Okay, again on the right in orange, it's the exact same conjugation as ARE verbs, but you just have to insert mi, ti, si, ci, vi, si, okay, in front of these verbs. All right, so let's look over a list of reflexive verbs. We can also call them reciprocal verbs. Okay, here they are. Abbracciarsi, to hug each other. Aiutarsi, oh sorry, there should be one I in aiutarsi in the beginning. A-I-U-T-A-R-S-I, to help each other. Baciarsi, to kiss each other. Capirsi, to understand each other. Conoscersi, to meet each other, to get to know each other. Farsi regali, to give each other gifts. Guardarsi, to look at each other. Incontrarsi, to meet each other. Lasciarsi, to leave each other or break up. Parlarsi, to talk to each other. Salutarsi, to greet each other. Scriversi, to write each other. Telefonarsi, to telephone each other. Vedersi, to see each other. All right, so do you notice on the end of every single one of these verbs, there's a si, 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 okay? What you're gonna go by to make the conjugation is what it if it's an ARE or ERE or IRE verb, okay? Most of these are ARE verbs. And that's the end, guys. It's the end of Module 4. All right, so this week we're practicing tenses and verbs a lot, and I will see you in Module 5.